morning or afternoon, depending on where you are, I think, to everyone. And today we're going to talk about the Stratum Hub and getting data out of it. So one of the things that we've been focused on is additional ways for you to access and work with information in Stratum. So we thought we'd talk a little bit about that. And as far as today's agenda, so intros, I'm not expecting all of you guys to intro yourself. I'm just going to intro myself. I'm Frank Bunker over here at Sylvan. Probably know a lot of you, but for those of you that don't know me, I'm responsible for our development and involved with our product strategy. Also work a lot on the post-sale side with folks, and some during the sales side as well. So a lot of different inputs into Stratum and what we're doing with Stratum, and probably more importantly, been around the product a long time. So pretty familiar with it and all the different things we're doing here. So with that, I'll talk just real briefly about the Data Hub and how we're transforming Stratum into not only a database that you use our stuff to get data out of and use our stuff to get data into, but how you can get additional information into Stratum. And then today, what we're going to focus on today, and that's the ways to get data out of Stratum. And then hopefully, if we have some time, Q&A. And I believe I managed to not open up the phones last time for Q&A, but certainly I'm watching the chat. So if you're have a question, don't hesitate to enter it in chat. If I don't answer your question, I will try and get back to you via email or something that way as well. So, please let me know if I can't tell through how you logged into Zoom who you are, where I can get a hold of you when you ask if you leave a chat question. So first, let's just talk a little bit about the Stratum Data Hub, and probably most importantly for today's session, what we're going to talk about with regards to getting data out of Stratum. So last week, we focused very heavily or entirely on getting data into Stratum and some of the different ways you can do that through our Analyst Hub and Stratum Link and data copy and data import and those kinds of features that we've added in the last couple of releases to help you as an analyst be able to get information into Stratum without IT intervention and getting that done. On today's session, as we think of the information you've collected in Stratum, we want to talk about different ways that you can access and take advantage of that information. And to do that, we've developed a series of enhancements that have become available in the last couple of releases or will be coming available in future releases. Hopefully I've listed those out so you can tell which things are available today. And by the way, the current version of Stratum will soon be, or is at least internally here, 7.2, and you'll be able to request that upgrade shortly. So you'll get some notification about that coming out. So in addition to some of the traditional methodologies where you're going directly into Stratum and requesting data, the classic would be when you go into Stratum Viewer. We'll look at that real quick, and you get information out of Stratum, or maybe through our dashboards that we introduced the enhancements to those a little while ago. So maybe you're going to use that feature function, or maybe you want to work, say, in Power BI or in Excel. And one of the focuses of our development efforts today are around the concept of add-ins for Excel, Power BI, reporting services, things like that, where you might want to leverage the information that you have in Stratum through these other components. So what I thought I would do is kind of take you through all the different ways that I came up with real quick, putting this together, that you can get data out of Stratum. I know this is a busy looking slide, but what I wanted to do was have it up here. So if you guys go back and look at this video, you can stop on this slide, and this will tell you things you can go and find on sylvan.com, where there are additional resources about each of the things I'm going to talk about today. So for Stratum Viewer, there's lots of stuff out there in the recorded insight classes and in the forum. For each of the other items here, I've either listed a video that's available that'll give you more information more in-depth information than what I'll be able to do in our 30 minutes today, or I think some of them too, like down, yeah, like right here for data. This is actually a topic. You could actually search for this in the forum and find this. So you'll be able to see that stuff. So I'm going to go through each of these, talk a little bit about them, and spend a little time showing you what some of the options are here. So Stratum Viewer, I hope everyone that's on this call is familiar with Stratum Viewer, but Stratum Viewer it continues to be the source and the hub of access for information that you have in Stratum. So you guys know today, this is just, and by the way, I'm in 7.2. This is the latest homepage that gives you access to all your Stratum resources. For those of you that are wondering, we have a bunch of classes out there. We have a customer forum. You can go to the resource center either through here, you can go to sylvan.com and get access to all the different recorded classes we have. But when I look at a view in Stratum, you guys are familiar with this. You can come in and you can have pretty straightforward stuff. One thing I did want to mention while we're in just looking at this, I am in 7.2. There's now an include or exclude feature. So you can go ahead and include and exclude on your filters. That'll be a new feature in 7.2. But when you come into a view, there's also some new look and feel stuff. But you can see that pretty plainly you can do all the things you're familiar with in a view. So those are pretty standard things that everyone on this call is probably familiar with. I hope they are. But a couple of things that you can do in a view when you think about getting information in Strata beyond the standard drill down filtering, right? You can also link to other views. So if you're in a view and you want to go see more information about something, you can see here I've set up a link. We call this hyperlinking, but you can do that kind of thing in a view too. So this will spawn a whole new view to show me, in this case, it exploded that 1 month's worth of data into 12 months worth of information for that customer, rolling 12 months. So you can see that here. And this is, all different kinds of information about that particular cell that I clicked on. So that's something you can do in views, but that's one mechanism you have for getting data in Stratum. And it's important that you are aware of the views and the views that are available, because as I show you some of the other access methods that we have to get information out of the hub, they tend to build on the views that you have. And probably the first thing that makes sense to show there is, say, our new dashboard. So one of the things, if you've got multiple views, I can come in here and I can set up a dashboard to go ahead and see, instead of a single view at a time like you use in Viewer, I can now see multiple views at one time. You can see here, this is presenting me a series of views that I've put together in a dashboard. I call this my sales dashboard. I've got information about my where I'm at from a run rate, what my outlook is, my divisional dashboard, my sales to my distributors. So you can have a bunch of views on here, and these views are operable. If I want, I can drill down. I can just like any other view you guys are familiar with. It all works the same here. So you have that in a dashboard. In addition, in the dashboard, again, building on the view concept, I can go ahead and I can pick any one of these views and I can link to see more information about that visual on that dashboard. So here I was looking at sales. Now I've drilled in and I've got the table that shows me all of the detail for the reps for the year-to-date and current month sales and where they're at on a run rate mode. So those are all things you can do with some of the features we have in Stratum today. So that's kind of Viewer and the dashboards that I mentioned at the first two things here. Now, again, as I mentioned, if you want more data or more information on those, there's some great insight classes done by some of the other guys that really go into a lot of detail on stuff here. And then there's a bunch of information on the forum as well. So now getting down to what we think of as the Access Hub. And the Access Hub is made up of a couple of components. One is the broadcasting ability for you to send information out to other people. And that could either be reports or it could be alerts. And those are two different things I'll show a little bit on. And then the other is the new, really where we've put a lot of effort in, and that's some of the new connectors that we have. And I'll show some of those as well here in just a second. So when we talk about broadcasting, that's pretty straightforward. Again, you can send reports out in Stratum, and you can do that and they show up. Typically you broadcast them to someone's via email. You can broadcast reports out to your network if you want to use that data for use in a say another function that you have or another application where you want to pick up data from Stratum, knowing that Stratum's updated on a regular basis, on a systematic basis, and then you can schedule reports to be thrown out to the network or data thrown out to the network that you can pick up elsewhere as well. So that's another thing. But you can just see here, I've got a series of, these are reports, and I'm things like an inventory or a weekly sales package or things like that. And the other thing you can have is alerts. And I'll just go in here, and when we say alerts, you're really more focused on less getting an entire packet of data and this very specific information out that references specific occurrences or things that you're checking for. And you can see here, I've got a new order type or sales, low inventory, looking for replacement, product replacements or declining sales or negative sales or negative gross margin. So you can set up alerts in Stratum that allow you to find only these situations and then push those out. Again, all of this is driven through views. So again, Viewer, as you guys know it today, and your interaction with views and how you take advantage of those is really critical in the analysis hub as we think about how we're going to get data to people, whether it's a report, which is report packet, which we broadcast out as a group of views, whether it's an alert, which is a view that picks off through a set of business rules, very specific events that you want to alert people about, short on inventory, negative gross margin, things like that. And those are all things you can do using views. Now, the next side of this, as I begin to get into some of the connectors, I think is where we've begun to expand what we do in terms of, and where you can go get data from Stratum. Instead of having to be in Stratum and say export the data, et cetera, you can reach right into Stratum from other applications. And the one that's available became available earlier, or late last year, I guess I should say, instead of earlier this year, because much earlier it'd be tough, is the Power BI connector. So I've gone into my Power BI desktop client, and I'm going to search on Sylvan, and we've got a connector for Power BI that you can install. And here you can see what that connector is going to do is it goes out to Stratum, and it allows me to connect and see all of the views, again, back to the views that you have in Stratum and that you have access to. And then I can bring data in for any one of those views. So here's all my views in Stratum. I've structured some views that I like to bring data in specifically to Power BI. You can see, so I just searched up here and it showed me those views. But what I wind up with is over on the right here, when I select those, now I get basically a data source that has all of the columns I had in my view available to me to build a dashboard like this in Power BI. And you can see, I'm not going to go through how to build stuff in Power BI today, but this basically allowed me to use what I call my sales analysis report. And that is a view, just FYI, that's a view that has months going across the top. So, or I'm sorry, I have months going down the side in there, but it's using time as a dimension. So that's not a time range view. Over here, I have another view I've included, which is my comparative sales view, which in fact is, you can see here, I've got different measures that are now available to me in Power BI, which are just columns in the view in Stratum that represent time ranges, year to date, month to date, stuff like that, rolling 3 months. I've got that stuff. So, and then these connectors, this is the Power BI connector for this particular report, what's called a report in Power BI, can be set up so that there's a scheduled piece that will automatically update the data associated with these views. So this Power BI report is updated on some regular basis, maybe as often as you update Stratum. So that's something that is available now. It's called the Power BI connector. In addition, with Power BI, we also have what we'll have upcoming, and I think I marked it in the PowerPoint. I just talked about the Power BI connector. Here, there'll be a new Power BI visualization piece, and what this will be in the next release. And what this is targeted at is when you're in Power BI, so you're creating a report and you want to link back to Stratum. So you're looking at this data, maybe this data is a relatively high level. I think I have it just down to the customer and rep. So I'm looking at that data, and the brand, but I'm looking at that data and I want to get back to Stratum. You'll see there's a little icon here, and that icon allows you to say, hey, I want to pass certain data from my report back to a view in Stratum. And for those of you that have created hyperlinks before, the other part of this enhancement in this Power BI visualization is that the idea of passing data back to Stratum will become much easier. The idea of previously, when you created a hyperlink in the current versions of Stratum, you have to have a parameter defined to accept what you're passing back. We're adding a bunch of intelligence about how we allow you to pass in data and take advantage of it. So you won't have to create parameters in the views you're going to. It makes it much simpler, and it's pretty cool the way it works. But anyways, you'll see here we have a visualization that you can import into Power BI and take advantage of that. Now, how that manifests itself to a user, if I'm the Power BI client and I'm building reports, if I was to go maybe back over here and into that same report we were just looking at, but I'm looking at it on the website. So now I'm a user, I've gone in, I'm looking at the report. I now can go, hey, I'm interested in, someone on this down here. I've got a heat map showing, I'll just go to Patrick Hurley here. So I highlight Patrick Hurley, all the graphs respond to that. And once that happens, I can actually click the icon to go to Stratum, and this will open up a view in Stratum specifically for Patrick Hurley. You can see here it's filtered on Patrick Hurley. So what I'm able to do from Power BI is, through our visualization, is link directly back into Stratum to get more detail, to get into all the detail, get a grid that shows me what's driving maybe the higher level data that I have in Power BI. So instead of having to take all of my detail and slamming that on in Power BI and trying to come up with some way to get through that in Power BI, and they do have a grid. It's not as functional as the Stratum grid. You can turn around and just link directly back to Stratum, so you can see all that, and you can maybe front end do some of your stuff with Power BI. So that's one connector that we have today, and the visualization will be coming up. Those links back to Stratum, by the way, you can do those without our visualization, and there's some classes out there on how to do that. But the Power BI visualization will make that much simpler and easy. So as an analyst, you can go in and just select the view you're interested in and get the view ID, and then send parameters over to that, and it'll be very easy to set that up. But you can do that today in Power BI with Power BI connector the way it is today, and with some tricks in Power BI that if you've got questions or need to learn about that, just let us know and we can make sure you know that. The next connector I want to talk about was what we're doing in Excel. And the Excel connectors and the reporting services connector are also going to be in the next release. And I want to just say, for both of those items, I do not have a prototype on the reporting services connector, but I do on the Excel connector, and I wanted to show you what that was going to look like. So let me jump over into Excel, and you can see I'm in Excel here. I've installed our connector, and you can see up at the top here, there's a Stratum menu item, and it brought up a number of things here. And you can see I've opened the Get Stratum Data over here. Again, it brings up a list of views. So again, this connector is linked back to the views you have in Stratum. And I can select one of these views. I'll select this comparative sales view, and I'll just say, hey, insert the data from that. And what's going to happen there is, you'll see there it went out, it inserted a new tab for me, and called, amazingly enough, Power BI or PBI comparative sales. And then it has the columns along with the data from that view. However, I've defined that over in Stratum, so you can see that and and you can take advantage of that data. Another set of data that I had imported previously in here was data from a plan. So last year's sales data. So I imported, a bunch of data with last year's sales. I moved that into a budget spreadsheet that is refreshed when I refresh that data, which, by the way, when you look at the Stratum stuff. If you go in, you can click refresh, and that'll refresh all the Stratum data that you've linked into this particular spreadsheet. But the other thing I can do, which is kind of cool on this connector, so I brought that data in. Maybe I want to update. I don't know. I'll update this cell to be 5,000. But you can just update this data. But then I can push this data back to Stratum. So now, not only can I pull data into Stratum, I can take data from Excel, and really this goes back up through the data, our data import piece that you guys are familiar with, and it will automatically import this data into Stratum. So you can see it brought up my spreadsheet. It's actually loading that data up into the data mapper. I can configure this. This is the same functionality that we showed last week around the data import. So it's just leveraging the data import. It's pretty cool. And then I can come in here and my dates are like this. I say, okay, it's gonna remap some things based on some of that configuration information. You can see it recognized the division as a dimension. If I go down here, it recognized, the plan amount going into March, so stuff like that. So it's going to import that data for me. So, that's a cycle you can go through, which allows you to go ahead and grab data from, while you're in Excel, grab data from Stratum, make updates to that data, and then push that data back up to Stratum after you've made those adjustments. And in general, we see this in a planning mode, but that's something you can do when you're in Stratum. So let's see. So that was really talking about, I'm down to the Excel connector. I've talked about the Excel connector. The reporting services connector, I don't have a prototype of that yet, but I actually saw the first rough draft of that code yesterday, and it's pretty cool. You go into Stratum. For those of you that are familiar with reporting services, what will happen is you'll get a data source in reporting services that's available that's available to you in reporting services, and that will reference, again, linking back to a view in Stratum. You can create a data source out of a view, and then the data associated with that view will be pulled into your report, and you'll be able to leverage that data up in reporting services. So pretty cool functionality there as well. So that's a series of connectors that we're working on. We've got development in progress on all of those. You guys are already familiar with exporting data, I'm sure, in Stratum, but that is another way you can get information out of Stratum, and you can do that in a couple of ways. One is you can get data out in the traditional report format, which is your formatted Excel that allows you to have, if you've got, I don't know, graphs or anything else, any formatting you've done, it includes that. The second thing you can do is you can get data out in what we call in its data form. And I think it's important that you're aware of this, because if you're exporting data from Stratum and using that in a report, in another application, or using it as a data, I'll call it a data sheet in Excel, you might not want the data necessarily formatted. What you want is you want it to export unformatted and raw, and you want it to happen as fast as possible. And that's an option that you can see when you export the information. The export type here is export data. If you don't have this export data option, that you probably don't have the broadcast server, and that's a feature of that. It is really great though for people that export large sets of data, because it's very, very fast in comparison to the report format. So, but that's something, and there's a good discussion on this out in the forum. You can search on the fastest way to export to Excel, and you'll see that. And then the last thing that I want to talk about in terms of getting data out of Stratum is just the existing integration that allows you to actually reach directly into the Stratum database. This is not going through a view, so you lose all of the handling, all the things we built in around time. You have to just use time kind of raw, but there are some customers out there that are using this, and that exists, and it's another way you can take advantage of it. And there's a insight session. It's rather lengthy, but it talks about doing this, and it's called Excelling with Stratum. You can see it there, and you can get that out on sylvan.com. So that is a pretty fast discussion of a bunch of different ways you can get information out of Stratum. If you guys have any questions, use the chat box to ask a question and I can try and answer them. In the meantime, just some information, contact information for you guys, how to get a hold of me directly. There's also information there on different resources that we have. As I mentioned, sylvan.com, you can find information on the insight classes. All the insight classes, the recordings are out there. There's the forum where you can ask questions or read other stuff, and then also the videos that we've created, both the insight classes, the marketing videos, as well as other educational videos, the getting started series, things like that are all available out on YouTube if you search on Sylvan Software. So those are all resources that are available to you.